now I see our team members not fault finding or blaming or finger pointing that, such and such team member is not doing their job. Instead, they understand it's the process. It's a process glitch, and they initiate the conversation from a process perspective. It shifted the blame and the attention from people to what is it in the process that's not working that we can solve together.
Hi everybody, I'm Elizabeth Swan.
And I'm Tracy O'Rourke.
And we are from GoingSixSigma.com, and you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast, where we wrestle with tough questions, talk to thought leaders, discuss great books with authors, and get insights from Lean Six Sigma practitioners.
And we let you in on helpful apps, bring you the news, and challenge the status quo so you can build your problem-solving muscles. So what's on the last menu of the summer, Elizabeth?
Oh no, summer's ending. Well, today's menu will give you some great things to contemplate while you get in a few more days at the beach. Today's featured interview is Ekta Vyas, the Director of Human Resources for Lucile Packard Children's Hospital in the Stanford University system. Tracy discusses some great tips for transforming HR processes, and every organization has HR processes, even if they're little. For In the News, we'll let you in on our behind-the-scenes prep for our panel discussions at the Women's Leadership Focus Day at the upcoming PEX conference. For Q&A, we'll answer our own question this time about what we learned from participating in Katie Anderson and Karen Ross's coaching community. And for our book review, we'll give you some insights of the new book, Getting Home, by Liz McCartney and Zach Rosen of SBP, which stands for the St. Bernard Project. It's an amazing journey of how they learn to help people recover from and prepare for disasters, and their work has impacted our entire country. It's a great day at the cafe, Tracy.
It absolutely is. Remember to stay tuned for this month's coupon code in order to get a discount on GoLeanSixSigma.com online training.
Time for the news, Tracy.
We are running a discussion about women in leadership in a few weeks, and we're galvanizing our Wonder Women of Quality network to help us.
Yeah, Tracy, I am really looking forward to this, and I just think it's important to let our listeners know that we're running this lunchtime informal discussion panel at the PEX conference in San Diego at the end of this month. For those listeners who have not heard, the Business Transformation Leaders Summit is being put on by the Process Excellence Network at the end of August, from Monday the 26th through Thursday the 29th. And on Thursday the 29th, there is a Women Leaders Focus Day with a great lineup of speakers, networking opportunities, and discussion panels.
I'm really excited about participating in this as well. We're running an informal discussion titled Advocating for Ourselves, Increasing Women's Voice in Operational Excellence. Our listeners know about our Wonder Women of Quality series, and what's great is that we reached out to our Wonder Women Network for some input on this topic. Karen Ross, co-author of The Toyota Way to Service Excellence, had some really nice input about overcoming barriers to being heard. The only barriers are in our minds. When I worked at companies that wouldn't give me a promotion, I left and I went elsewhere, she says. And when people said, if you say those things, you'll get fired, I said them anyways and got promoted. When people said you're too old to start your own company and that working with smaller businesses will never work, I ignored them and I started my own company at 52. Stop listening to other people and tell yourself what you can do.
I love that. And another Wonder Woman who actually was Karen Ross's mentor, Leslie Henkler, she had this to say in terms of how to be at the table. She says, as leaders, we're accustomed to Socratic leadership. Guiding versus telling, asking questions to get others to think. And that model can contribute to others not hearing our voice or understanding the amazing value we bring by teaching others to think versus telling others what to do. She says she's a big believer that results speak louder than words, and she makes sure she celebrates team success, and she always ties all the work back to the business result that's been delivered. She finds that delivering results will get you a, quote, seat at the table more often than not. And she's never hesitant to showcase her team's accomplishments and when appropriate, the role she played in getting them there. That's a nice one too, celebrating accomplishments. I love that.
Definitely. If you're already coming to the OpEx conference, we hope to see you there. And if you have not registered, but you're in San Diego, come join us. We'll have a booth there with our Director of Sales, Kelvin Tanwakio, and Angela Miller and Cindy Hansen of UC San Diego will be there as well.
And you should come Thursday for a great focus day in women's leadership and tell us what you think. I'm Elizabeth Swan, and you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast.
Up next, it's Q&A.
This time we're asking ourselves the question, right? What did we learn from participating in a coaching community?
And that is actually something we learned. We need to ask ourselves more questions for reflection. This was the brainchild of Karen Ross and Katie Anderson, two thought leaders with extensive coaching practices. They put together a coaching community of 8 coaches or aspiring coaches, and they had a different topic each week. And it started with all of us having to clarify our own purpose statements, either personal or professional, or for some, it is the same thing. I focused on my personal purpose, and honestly, I decided that I spent a lot of time at work, and I needed some help with coaching my 16-year-old teenager. So I selected that as part of the work that I did with these sessions. How about you, Elizabeth?
Yeah, you focused on the personal, and I focused on our professional purpose. You know, at GoLean6Sigma.com, our mission is to revolutionize the way people learn process improvement, making it easy for everyone, everywhere to build their problem-solving muscles. And I had some takeaways I did not expect, and some that I did. I did enjoy the group, as I thought I would. Everybody was candid about their successes and their failures, which was really helpful. I know it's hard sometimes to acknowledge when we either didn't do something we were supposed to do or did it and you know, we fell on our faces, but we learned so much more from failure. And there were different lessons or focus areas each week. And one of the first ones was to practice stating your intention at the start of each coaching session. You put your purpose statement front and center, so it has to connect to your intentions. And then there's space for actions. What did you do to address your intentions? And the last column is titled Reflections. At the end of the session, how'd you do? Did your actions help you realize your intentions, you know, as a coach or not? And if not, why? And there's learning, and you take that into consideration for your next round of coaching in terms of what your intentions are and your actions and reflections. And this was such a revelation to me, which in some ways I'm a little disappointed in myself, but it's such a revelation that I incorporated it into my daily routine. You know, I was missing reflection. I have a great morning routine. I am focused, but I don't start the following day reflecting on what I learned the day before, and that is wrong. So I fixed that.
Well, you're one step ahead of me, Elizabeth, because I don't even reflect in the morning. So what I learned is that reflection is very valuable. And I was actually waiting for these calendared appointments to reflect on things with my son. And I needed to be more intentional about reflection in that way. So I think I had a learning there that reflection is important, and you have to build it in, or you don't actually reflect. You just, you know, basically many of us are managed by our calendars. And if we don't actually have it on our calendars, we might not do it, or it might not be a focus.
I think you ended up biking with him more, didn't you?
Yes. So, yes, I really discovered that ultimately I may not be able to control my son, my 16-year-old son, like when they're 8. And I think that's a lot of parents' expectation, is they expect to have all this control and they're becoming independent. And you really can't. What I can really only ask for is to spend more time with them, with him. And so I would negotiate time with him because, you know, he didn't want to spend time with me. He wants to spend time with his friends. So that was a good learning for me, is if I can get in front of him, and if I go to lunch with him, or if I go on a bike ride with him, he will talk. And then I feel like I know what's going on in his head. And that was really my purpose, is to really feel connected so that I have an idea of where his head is. And I may not be able to control his thoughts. I may not be able to control his actions, but that was a good learning for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think motion is a really great way to collaborate, like in the process world, we collaborate on a project or do Gemba walks, process walks together, things like that. So bike riding, I think it sort of loosens everybody up. You're doing something, so your brain is free and the conversation is freer. So
yes, I also had an early learning that I may be very attentive and listening when I'm at work, and I can respond professionally very well and answer and ask very good questions. But for some reason, when I talk to my son, all of that knowledge somehow dissipates, and I have to use my filter lock, because the only question I want to ask him sometimes is, "Are you psycho?"
She's kidding, everyone. She's kidding. Disclaimer, she does not ask her son that, ever.
That's in my head, but I have to really work to make sure that doesn't come out of my mouth.
Well done, Tracy. Well done. So great community of practice. They're starting a new one up. There might still be slots available, but that was a nice experience for both of us, a huge learning experience. And you sort of heard some of our learnings, but obviously there's a lot more. So that was the question that we asked ourselves, but we have a forum for learners to ask questions and get answers from coaches, from all of us, or from their peers. And it's also a great place to connect with coaches and peers. And it's part of something we offer called the Go-Getters membership. And it's full of great stuff. You get access to all single modules and all webinars. And there are a ton of great topics like process, which are Gemba walks, how to facilitate them, how to do the orientation. There's 5 whys, there's 8 ways, and there's so many more coming. There's currently over $360 worth of single modules, and the membership is only $199 a year, and we're adding 2 modules a month. So sorry, I get stuck on the single modules because the value is just so huge. And Tracy, there's more stuff, right, in the membership?
Yes, you also get the ebook, The Problem Solvers Toolkit, that Elizabeth and I wrote, which is an easy to use, quick reference guide for 35 Lean Six Sigma concepts and tools. And you also get 20% off all certifications to enhance your resume and advance your career. So if you're not a go-getter yet, then go get the membership.
Go get her.
Go get her. I'm Tracy O'Rourke, and you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast. In a short while, we'll get to hear my interview with Ekta Vyas. She is the Director of Human Resources for Stanford Children's Hospital, part of the Stanford University system. But first, it's the printed page. So this book is changing the way this country responds to disaster, isn't it, Elizabeth? I'm so excited.
Yeah, it has, and it is. This month's featured book is Getting Home by Liz McCartney and Zach Rosen. This is a truly inspirational book as it touches on a lot of timely topics. It's the story of a young couple. They went to New Orleans to help after the devastation of Hurricane Katrina. And 14 years later, they're running a multi-state nonprofit with a mission to reduce the time between disaster and recovery. The company is called SBP, which stands for St. Bernard Project. This was one of the hardest hit areas of New Orleans, and it's where they originally set up shop.
The CEO is Liz McCartney, and what she's achieved is really amazing. She and Zach started out as a school teacher and a defense lawyer, and they didn't know anything about rebuilding houses. They walked into the hardest hit areas of New Orleans, and there were cars on houses, houses on cars, mud, trees, debris, and mold growing everywhere. And they got some timely help from Toyota Production Systems Support Center, the great nonprofit set up by Toyota, and they turned her into a process improvement geek like us.
Right. She learned how to 5S their warehouse. They figured out how to build houses faster by turning the job sites into visual workspaces. She went out and got whiteboards and tape and created a construction schedule. They held morning huddles to address problems, and just learning how to bring up problems was a total learning for them. She had to figure out, just like every other organization trying to build a problem-solving culture, how to make it safe to bring up issues.
She also had to manage masses of volunteers and a largely untrained workforce that grew to the hundreds on spring break and then disappeared from August through the holidays. She's got amazing lessons for people trying to hire good problem solvers, and she's got also some great techniques for managing demand. She employed Haijanka, which is Japanese for load leveling. This is a constant struggle for them since they've expanded to help a lot of different disaster sites. One thing she addresses is how siloed we are in our municipalities and again at the federal level. In New Orleans, she helped connect people with FEMA, HUD for loans, insurance companies, and town agencies for building permits. After SBP started helping others, she realized that as many floods, hurricanes, fires, and tornadoes we experience, we never seem to learn from them. And so I am just so inspired by this book because we hear all of these disaster stories all the time and how horrible the conditions are and how slow it is for recovery. And I really like the measure that they talk about, number of homecomings. I love that. It's not about how many homes get built, but how many we can actually bring somebody back home. I love that.
Yeah, the image of people being welcomed into their homes. You've got photos of them, cutting the tape, and people are just ear to ear grins. And when she initially checked with FEMA, she asked about the plan for rebuilding houses in New Orleans, and she found out they were going to demolish all the houses first. And that was going to be over a year before they were going to build any houses. So that meant that all that time survivors were going to be homeless.
Oh my gosh.
She didn't know the term. She didn't, but she discovered batching. She knew it was bad for people waiting to resume their lives.
Yes, that's amazing and sad that that would be the approach.
But that's how they did it. They said for the last 30 years, it's just the way they always did it.
Yeah. They just applied it for building residences and not necessarily thinking about the customer. They just want to live in a home.
Right.
So coming from knowing nothing, they got really good. They got the time to build houses down from 181 days to 61 days. They could teach construction classes. SBC is helping our country learn how to better prepare for the disasters. They're helping people get insured or get better insurance. They're helping towns figure out where the central communication should be when disaster strikes. FEMA responded to 47 disasters in 1997, and in 2011, that spiked to 242. 1 in 4 Americans will be impacted by a disaster this year. They've got great resources that they happily share them with everyone, and this book is a must-read.
Yeah, absolutely. As you can tell, SBP has positively impacted this country, and we've invited Liz McCartney to join the pantheon of Wonder Women of quality because it's an understatement, she deserves it.
She definitely does. And be sure to check out the full book review on our website that Elizabeth wrote because Elizabeth writes really good book reviews.
I'll pay you later, Tracy.
It's time to announce the coupon code.
This code is for 20% off any of our Lean Six Sigma training and certification courses. That's white belt, yellow belt, green belt, black belt, and lean training.
And if you've just joined us at the Just in Time Cafe, just use coupon code 20JASMINE. That's 20 JASMINE during checkout. Make sure to use it soon since the coupon code will expire at the end of September.
Coming up next, it's your interview with Ekta Vyas, Tracy. Can you give us a little preview?
Yes. Ekta Vyas is the Director of Human Resources, as you have said already, at Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, Stanford, which is part of the Stanford University system. She is a powerhouse in HR and has really embraced the principles of Lean and believes that every single HR group is a ripe environment for applying process improvement. So if you want to hear how they've applied Lean in HR, you don't want to miss this interview. I'd like to welcome our guest for today's special, Dr. Ekta Vyas, the Director of Human Resources at Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, Stanford Children's Health. It's a children's hospital, which is part of the Stanford University system. Ekta is also an adjunct management faculty with San Jose State University's College of Business and serves on IREM, which is the International Association for Human Resources Information Management Board of Directors, as Director of Education. IREM is the only organization in the industry solely dedicated to HR technology. Ekta has over 20 plus years of experience across multiple industries, including manufacturing, technology, academia. Her past 13 years have been in the healthcare HR field at Stanford. Ekta also has a master's degree in the industrial organizational psychology and a doctorate in organization and management. Her career trajectory includes leading several transformational initiatives in the organizations as senior management positions or as a consultant. Ekta attributes her knowledge of and experience with lean methodologies to her learnings at Stanford Children's Health for the past 6.5 years. Welcome to the cafe, Ekta.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for the invite. It's a pleasure to join you today.
Well, I'm really excited to talk with you today. I also know that you have spoken at a number of conferences and have participated on panels quite often. Most recently, applying lean in HR healthcare. You were a presenter at the Lean Healthcare Academic Conference at Stanford in 2018, and you had a session titled Adopting a Lean Mindset for Recruitment Process Reengineering. Tell us a little bit about your presentation and what were some of the elements that you covered in that?
Sure. So that was certainly an honor to be presenting at the Stanford conference. The session it really talked about the work that my team and I had undertaken for close to 2.5 to 3 years, continually working on improvement in our recruitment processes. And it really started, if I tell it as a storyline, it really started back in 2013, early 2013, when we launched a new system. We transitioned from Lawson to PeopleSoft, and it was a completely new recruitment process. And slowly and gradually, we started realizing that the process was causing delays in the recruitment cycle, and it was not meeting all the stakeholders' needs in a timely manner. And then we knew that we were approaching the expansion of our hospital with an expected add of 500 new positions on top of the everyday volume. And we were like, gosh, how will we handle that high volume recruitment if we have so many gaps right now and so many delays? So that's actually where Lean came in for our rescue. From a timing perspective, I had attended our 3-day leadership training, was getting ready, with Lean methodologies. And I came back and started teaching my team members on the methodology, and I started doing collective brainstorming with them. So the goal for us was standardizing and improving the recruitment process flow even before it came to recruitment. So it really was a value chain analysis all the way through the candidate offer stage, and we wanted to establish a shorter process cycle time for each stage of the recruitment process. So my conference presentation was actually a full-blown presentation of our 3 to 4 years of journey from the time we started doing the problem identification, problem analysis, current state analysis, which actually was across technology, content, and process, all three of them, for the end-to-end value chain. And then how we reduced the process cycle time for each recruitment cycle component. And ultimately, actually, I presented that as a success story because when we opened the new hospital, we were able to fill 98% of the positions in a timely manner, actually, either on the start date or prior to start dates with no delay. And we also decreased our time to fill. It was really phenomenal success story, and a lot of that had to do with our lean methodology, mindset, collective problem solving, making the problems more transparent, and developing the front line to collectively think and strategize to reduce waste from the process.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. I've seen a lot of movement in health, in HR, specifically with lean principles. There seems to be a huge surge as of late. And I teach at UC San Diego, so we have a lot of people coming into those sessions publicly from different organizations. And we're seeing a lot of onboarding, recruitment, hiring, universal processes that really exist in almost every organization. And so I'd love to just get some ideas from you about, number one, why did you guys decide that lean was going to make a difference in HR, specifically in the healthcare space? And then we could talk a little bit about what you're doing to implement some of those things. But I'd love to hear a little bit about the why. How did you guys arrive at implementing lean in HR?
So, I'll say the why of implementing lean in HR really has to do with this direction that organization actually took. The executive leadership decided around 2012, very seriously decided that we will undertake this initiative, and we created our own version of, applying lean methodology and mindset, and it's called Packard Quality Management System. In short, it's called PQMS. And part of PQMS was the end-to-end lean methodologies and toolkit, including the daily management system, including the problem identification, problem analysis, developing the front line, the empowerment, the recognition, all of that, problem escalation, everything that has to do with how you apply lean methodology to drive stakeholder value, to drive customer value. HR specifically, we had a leader. I report to our CHRO, Greg Souza. He actually was one of the early champions, was part of the executive team that made this decision. And it started with making more visible all the problems that we were discussing in human resources through visibility walls, and actually starting to tie our annual operating plan and our goals to everyday problem solving and having an open discussion through huddles, tiered huddles, and regular conversations. So with that environment being set up, actually, I was influenced at a personal level, wanted to learn more and more. And it was this training session offered by our corporate process improvement area, our enterprise process improvement area, who are solely dedicated team of professionals to be taking PQMS forward and implementing and training the organization on lean, mindset and methodologies. And I attended their leader workshop. I was among the first, I believe, in HR leadership to go for the 3-day workshop. And basically, around the same time was, the problem that I just shared with you about the recruitment processes. So it was just perfect timing for us. Now, the visual management had already started, and everybody had started learning about it. And we actually realized that just making those problems visible, just talking about those goals on a weekly basis, having the tiered huddles where we could bring more than our individual team, cross-functional teams together to discuss problem, identify issues, and escalate them, for executive sponsorship as needed, how big a difference it made in just how we were going about our day-to-day work. I mean, without even talking about, A3 deep down root cause analysis, just having this visual daily management made such a huge difference. And then slowly and gradually, we started getting into leader standard work. We started getting into Gemba time and started expanding the effort. I think, to your question on why did we imbibe that whole philosophy in our HR functioning, it did start as an organizational effort. But within HR, what resonated deeply with me was that I found lean conversation, the methodology and the toolkit and all that learning directly associated with what we do in HR. HR is, there's a big component of HR that is process oriented. Mm-hmm. And then the outcome is really service delivery. Are you satisfying your customers? Are you driving value for your customers? Those customers could be managers. Those could be your employees, and the rest of the organization. And these two things, your process and is it driving value for the customers? They're foundational. They're fundamental to lean. And I think HR is one of the perfect areas mm-hmm. in any organization, in any industry, even beyond healthcare, to really, really take this methodology and shift the thinking and shift your lens of how you're viewing problems and how you're viewing waste in the process, and just really get some good tools to talk through those issues, warm handoffs, cross-functional handoffs, processes that go beyond HR, where you are working with finance, where you're working with hiring managers. So we really, really took it very seriously. Of course, leadership makes a big difference. All the leaders got on board and started doing that in their area. And slowly and gradually, HR was one of the biggest champions of lean at Stanford Children's.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great to hear. And I agree with you. I think there's HR and IT, for example, those two particular functions are in almost every organization. And there's so much opportunity still for people to embrace these methods and apply them. I remember I was just working with an organization and they were talking about how they had a project on employee readiness. And I said, well, how do you define that? And they said, well, when a new employee shows up, we want to make sure they have a place to sit and they have a laptop. And 30% of our new hires don't have those things. And isn't that an awful thing to come into a new job and not have these things? So that is, an experience we really don't want to add pain to a new employee when it comes to that.
Yeah.
All around, many of it is around process. So when you implemented the Lean Daily Management System, what would you say was the most challenging thing that you encountered when you started to implement that process and those systems? Did you run into any challenges?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. At a personal level, leading lean process improvement, my challenge really was more about bringing all the different stakeholders together and finding the time to brainstorm and problem solve. And, it might sound like, a very simple challenge to have, but it's actually a very difficult one to deal with when we work and live in a world where everybody is working 24/7 around the clock, and there's so many problems to solve that you don't get the time to stop and think about those problems. You're constantly mitigating issues, and you'll do whatever it takes to just keep moving forward because, that's an expectation. We are dealing with high volume of work all the time. And one of the things that you have to do when you use this toolkit, when you use this mindset, is this going through the analysis of why is this happening. If I were to just start asking the 5 whys and start getting to the root cause, the reality is when I started doing that, it opened up a Pandora's box. I had no idea until I started talking to my team members how much, broken component of, different stages of the process was impacting their day-to-day work. So when you pull them from that work, and, one of the things is I can't do lean process improvement alone as a leader just because I attended a 3-day training. It is a collective thinking, it's a collective problem solving, and I have to have the people who are closest to the process actually take part in that collective problem solving, right? So you have to pull them. You have to pull them and you have to find time to sit and think.
So you had mentioned some of the benefits you were experiencing and your team were experiencing as a result of implementing daily management. And I heard a saying from a colleague, it's easier and better to act your way into a new way of thinking than to think your way into a new way of acting. And so sort of like these daily management, it's a process, and sometimes people don't totally understand the benefit or see the value in it just yet. But then as they do it, they see the benefits, they see the value. Yeah. So tell me, how does the team feel about the daily management system that you're doing now? And what were some of those ahas that they've had about doing these activities?
Yeah, great question, Tracy. I'd say for my team, well, all of us in human resources actually, since the time we implemented this, it was both a new way of thinking and a new way of acting, which resulted in a new way of feeling, I would say. So initially, as I said, there was this whole frustration in my team members and a little bit of pushback on we really don't have time to come for these biweekly sessions, all of that. Now, visual management, it doesn't, if it's a 5-minute huddle or if it's a 15-minute huddle, you'll still find that time. And if the directive is coming from your CHRO, that's basically how you're going to operate. So you kind of go with the flow and start doing that. But one of the things that I would say is the new way of thinking and a new way of acting. I think the new way of thinking was really driven by being able to see the problems on our visibility wall, right? There's a daily readiness section, there's the operating plan. One of the biggest challenges, I think, in the past world that we lived in when we didn't have the visual management was even if you have shared the annual goals with the team, they don't retain it, right? We'll see that information once and we'll forget about it because you don't come and talk about that until you're at the end of the fiscal year and you're reporting on how you did as an organization. But when it's on the board, right, and your entire operating plan is aligned to your core goals of the organization. How do they cascade down to human resources? How do they cascade down to your unit level? And then what's your role as an individual in helping that? That made a huge difference. People started seeing, well, how is my work that I am doing aligned to the organization's goals? That's one thing. I completely see like a 360-degree change in how people are taking ownership. In fact, we have a culture now where one of our organizational goals is called respect for people, and that mostly CHRO takes the ownership. You know, he is the executive sponsor for that goal. And one of the things is, one of the goals within that larger goal is 75% of STPs, submitted and completed by frontline, by every employee of the organization. So what you're basically doing is creating as many problem solvers as there are employees in the organization, and you're empowering them and you are giving them the ownership and giving them the tools to do it. And the difference it has made, as I said, is in thinking and acting, because now the thinking has shifted to more my ownership. If I can do it, I'll solve it. If I have to find someone who has to work with me, I'll go and talk to that stakeholder. I think behavior-wise, which is the acting part, and the behavior, I look at that as the behavior, shift in the behavior. That's actually where now I see our team members not fault finding or blaming or finger pointing that, such and such team members not doing their job. Instead, they understand it's the process. It's a process glitch, and they initiate the conversation from a process perspective. It shifted the blame and the attention from people to what is it in the process that's not working that we can solve together. So it's actually a different world. It's really a different world because Lean is a mindset, and we've really seen it play as a mindset that changes how people approach a problem, how they identify it, how they solve it together, and if need be, escalate it.
Yes. Well, I can't believe we're almost out of time and out of coffee, Ekta. So I have a question for you. So do you have any advice for an HR group in particular? What would you suggest? What would you recommend if they were going to embark on implementing Lean? What advice would you have for this an HR group doing that?
So, what I would say, the first thing I would want any HR professionals or colleagues to realize is they are already working in an environment which lend itself very well to Lean methodologies and Lean thinking. I'll go back to where I started this conversation with you, and I said there are two components I see in HR, which is there's a heavy process orientation, and then, it all comes back to creating value for the customers, right? So and that's what Lean is about. Mm-hmm. It's about operational effectiveness. It's about creating operational effectiveness, incremental changes in your processes in order to improve efficiency and quality, right? You're doing these small incremental changes, but it's a long-term approach to work systematically. So don't think, how could you implement Lean in HR? In fact, the reality is it's a perfect ground for you to implement those methodologies. So just go ahead and embrace it. The other thing I would say is, when you talk about people development, HR is so much about people development. In fact, we are one of the primary owners in the organization to talk about people development, to think about people development, and to champion that. Lean offers you a wonderful opportunity to empower and develop your frontline to problem solve. So, organizations have HR departments who are developing people development strategies in multiple ways, right? Training and succession planning and all of that. And if you really start thinking about what you're doing in your daily management, if you embrace the lean methodology and lean approach, you are doing that frontline development and empowerment and subsequent, ownership of the issue, for them. You're doing that on a daily basis. So you've basically made people development a day-to-day thing and part of the culture of the organization. That's a wonderful, wonderful benefit that comes with lean. Another thing that I will say is, the collective approach to creating operational excellence. Being in HR for a very long time, one of the things that I really, really have realized is that HR processes are not limited to HR. HR processes go cross-functional in multiple ways. We work very closely with IT. We work very closely with marketing. We work very closely with finance. For recruitment, they work very closely with hiring managers. So driving value in an end-to-end process, if you have a toolkit and if you can develop a mindset to think about collective problem solving and break these cross-functional boundaries, that's a huge win for the entire organization. And it's a culture, that you'd really, really get a lot of value from. And lean methodology and lean mindset and approaches and the toolkit really, really offers that in abundance, I'll say. It's not a quick journey. It's not a quick goal to achieve. It takes time. And it also takes time in getting people on board, helping them get trained in the thinking, shifting the mental model, the way they're approaching problems. But the more you can work towards getting people on board and creating that mental model of everyday improvement ideas, of everyday problem solving, of bringing problems to the surface and thinking collectively, that it can really, really completely change the way HR achieves operational efficiency and drives value for the customers.
Well, thank you for sharing your insights. I'm excited. I think our audience is going to be really excited to hear this because really everybody's affected, just as you say, by HR processes. It can really benefit an organization if the HR group and human resources really embraces lean and lean principles. So thank you for sharing your experience and your opinions and knowledge about implementation in HR. I just had one last question for you. If people want to find you, how might they find you? Are you on LinkedIn? Is that the best way to find you? And then the other question I have is, when are you going to be presenting again? Are you going to be at the Healthcare Academic Conference at Stanford? Is there a 2019 conference?
Yeah, so answering your first question, I am a little social media shy, but I have a professional presence on LinkedIn. So that's the best way to get a hold of me. LinkedIn is where they can find me. In regards to my, yes, I do plan to join the upcoming Stanford conference, on lean and healthcare. I'm not presenting this year, but I'm definitely an attendee and a participant. I've been attending that conference ever since it started a couple of years back. But, there are other conferences that I'm presenting. I am in Chicago for the ASHRA conference. In fact, quite interesting that you asked, because ASHRA is American Society for Healthcare Human Resources, and the speaker session that I have is bringing together data analytics and lean. Actually, that's what I'm talking about, and highlighting some of the work where we've leveraged data analytics, applying lean methodologies and lean mindset, and driven some really, really good operational results. So that I'm presenting in Chicago in September, and then other, a couple of other engagements, speaker engagements in the fall.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for coming to the cafe and speaking about HR. We really appreciate it. And I want to thank our audience for listening in as well. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Tracy, for inviting me and, giving me this opportunity actually to share what we've done at Stanford Children's Health, leveraging the lean mindset, the lean methodologies, I think it's very promising. And I really hope that more and more HR departments are able to look into this and, get the wins that you get out of it.
Absolutely.
Be sure and check out the latest project of the month. Anna Schoenecker and Laura Wilson of King County managed to reduce taxpayer late fees by 62%. That's a lot of happy Washington State residents. You can read the snapshot in 5 minutes and get some great tips from these two. So be sure to check that out. And this month's Wonder Woman of Quality is the aforementioned Katie Anderson. She ran the Japan study trip that we recently joined, and she's got a great Wonder Woman of Quality post.
So join us next month because the interview is with Liz McCartney, this wonderful woman that we've been talking about. Elizabeth got to interview the amazing CEO of St. Bernard Project, so you don't want to miss that. And if you can, come join us in San Diego for the OPEX Leaders Summit Conference later this month, and come to the Women in Leadership Focus Day.
Thanks for visiting the Just in Time Cafe. You are clearly someone who spends their time wisely.
So we'll see you next month.